The cheap fabric of Clara's dress felt like a second skin of shame. It was the best she could find at the thrift store, a deep blue that she hoped would allow her to fade into the opulent shadows of the wedding reception. Every shimmering chandelier and clink of crystal glassware seemed to mock the single-digit balance in her bank account. She had spent her last $40 on a babysitter for her son, Leo, and a modest gift for the bride, her cousin Amelia. That $40 was supposed to be for groceries. She clutched a glass of water, avoiding the champagne flutes that floated past on silver trays. A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. Around her, distant relatives with impossibly white teeth and effortless smiles exchanged pleasantries. A few had already offered her their pitying glances, their voices dripping with condescension as they inquired about her situation. They meant her dead-end job as a waitress, her tiny apartment with the faulty heating, and the conspicuous absence of a husband. "Clara, darling, I almost didn't recognize you," her Aunt Carol trilled, her diamond earrings catching the light. "It's so brave of you to come all this way on your own." "It was no trouble," Clara lied, forcing a smile that felt brittle. The bus ride had taken 2 hours, and she had ironed her dress using the steam from her kettle. "And how is little Leo," Clara corrected softly. "He's wonderful. He just started walking." Her aunt's eyes glazed over, already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. The conversation was over. Clara was a footnote, a charity case invited out of familial obligation. She felt a familiar burn behind her eyes and quickly excused herself, seeking refuge on the deserted stone balcony overlooking the manicured gardens. The cool night air was a relief against her flushed cheeks. She just had to make it through another 2 hours, then she could go home, scoop her sleeping son from his crib, and forget this world existed. Her brief moment of peace was shattered by voices drifting from the open ballroom doors. It was her cousin, Amelia, the bride, her voice sharp and annoyed. "I know, I told my mother it was a bad idea. She looks so out of place. Did you see that dress? Honestly, it's just embarrassing for everyone." A man's deeper voice rumbled in response. "Just ignore her. It's your night." "I'm trying," Amelia sighed. "But people will talk. She's a reminder of, well, you know? It's just sad. A charity case at my wedding." The words struck Clara with the force of a physical blow. Her breath hitched, and the glass in her hand trembled. She had known they thought it, but to hear it spoken so callously on a night that was supposed to be about love and family was a unique kind of cruelty. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the urge to either cry or scream. Humiliation washed over her, hot and suffocating. She had to leave. Now. She turned on her heel, ready to flee, and walked directly into a solid wall of a man. A hand shot out to steady her, preventing the water from sloshing onto his impeccably tailored tuxedo. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, looking up into a pair of intense, steel-gray eyes. It was him, the man who had been talking to Amelia. His face was all sharp angles and stoic composure, a face she recognized from business magazines. Julian Thorne, CEO of Thorne Industries, the groom's billionaire business partner. His expression was unreadable, but she knew he had seen the flash of pain on her face, knew he had heard the conversation. He had stood there and listened to her cousin call her a charity case. Her shame curdled into a defensive anger. She tried to step around him, but he didn't move. He leaned in slightly, his voice a low whisper meant only for her. "They're wrong." Clara froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Be my +1 for the rest of the evening," he continued, his gaze unwavering. "It will give them something real to talk about." The offer was so absurd, so completely out of the realm of possibility, that she could only stare at him in stunned silence. This man, a titan of industry, was offering to be her shield. It had to be pity. The same pity her aunt had shown her, just wrapped in a more expensive package. "I don't need your pity," she finally managed to say, her voice tight with pride. A flicker of something, not anger, but perhaps frustration, crossed his face. "It's not pity," he stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It's an opportunity. For both of us. Now, take my arm." It was a command, not a request. Before she could protest further, he gently took her elbow and steered her back toward the ballroom doors. As they stepped into the light, a hush fell over the nearby clusters of guests. Heads turned. Whispers erupted. Her cousin Amelia's jaw dropped. Julian Thorne, a man known for his reclusive and intensely private nature, had arrived with the family's resident sob story on his arm. He led her to a small, unoccupied table and pulled out a chair for her with practiced elegance. He sat opposite her, his presence a formidable barrier between her and the prying eyes of the other guests. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the band. "Why are you doing this?" "I dislike bullies," he said simply, his eyes scanning the room with a cool detachment that made several people look away. "And I admire resilience." He looked back at her, and for a moment, she felt as if he could see every struggle, every sacrifice she had ever made. The rest of the evening passed in a surreal haze. Julian was a perfect gentleman, fetching her a drink, engaging her in quiet conversation about neutral topics, and never once letting his attention stray. He made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. When the time came for her to leave, he walked her to the entrance. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling inadequate. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," he replied. He handed a valet a card. "My driver will take you home." "No, I can't possibly." "It's done," he said, his tone final. "Get home safely to your son." She was too exhausted to argue. During the silent, smooth ride in the back of a luxury sedan, she replayed the night in her head, unable to shake the feeling that something significant had shifted. It was a fairy tale, a brief, glittering reprieve from her harsh reality. She expected to wake up the next morning and have it all feel like a dream. But the dream followed her home. The next afternoon, her doorbell rang. A man in a crisp uniform stood on her landing, flanked by boxes. It was a delivery from a high-end catering service, filled with a month's worth of healthy, chef-prepared meals for both an adult and a toddler. The note attached was simple, printed on heavy cream cardstock. "So you have one less thing to worry about." J.T. Clara stared at the boxes, a cold wave of suspicion washing over her. This was too much. This was not a simple act of kindness. This was an agenda. She found his company's main number online and, after navigating a maze of assistants, was put through to him. "Mr. Thorne," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "The food, it's too much. I can't accept it." "Clara," his voice was calm and steady through the phone. "Is the food not to your liking? That's not the point. Why are you doing this? What do you want?" There was a pause. "I ran a background check on you this morning," he said bluntly. Her blood ran cold. "You what?" "That's an invasion of my privacy." "It is," he agreed without apology. "It told me you have a degree in financial analysis from a top university, a degree you haven't used in 3 years. It told me you were at the top of your class. My company has an opening for a junior analyst. The position is yours if you want it. The salary will be more than enough to take care of you and your son." The suspicion in her chest solidified into a block of ice. This was a transaction. He had rescued her at the wedding, and now he was buying her. Maybe he wanted a mistress, a project, a story to tell his wealthy friends. "No," she said, her voice hard. "I am not for sale." "This has nothing to do with that," he said, a hint of weariness in his tone. "I need good people. You are qualified. The circumstances of our meeting were unusual, but the offer is professional. Come to my office tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Hear me out. If you still believe my motives are impure, you can walk away, and you will never hear from me again." She hung up, her mind racing. It was a trap. It had to be. But the thought of a real job, of using her brain again, of giving Leo a life where his mother wasn't constantly worried about their next meal, it was a powerful lure. Against her better judgment, she decided to go. She would hear him out, expose his true intentions, and walk away with her dignity intact. The next day, she stood before the towering glass skyscraper of Thorne Industries, feeling as out of place as she had at the wedding. Julian's office was on the top floor, a vast space with panoramic views of the city that made her feel small and insignificant. He was seated behind a massive mahogany desk, but he rose as she entered. He looked different here, more powerful, more commanding. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I'm here to say no in person," she stated, crossing her arms. "And to ask you to stop. The food, the job offer, it's all too much. I don't understand you." "Then let me explain," he said, his gaze softening. He gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. "Please." She remained standing. "Just tell me what you want, Mr. Thorne." A heavy silence filled the room. He walked around the desk, and stood before her, his expression etched with a pain so profound it took her breath away. "I had a son," he said, his voice quiet and raw. "His name was also Leo." Clara's defensive posture crumbled. "Had?" she whispered. He nodded, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond the city skyline. "He and my wife, Eleanor, were in a car accident 3 years ago. A faulty component in the braking system. He was 2 years old, the same age as your son. He died instantly. Eleanor, she held on for a year, but she never recovered. Her heart gave out." He finally looked at her, and she saw the wounded man beneath the billionaire's armor. "For 3 years, I've been hollow. I run this company, I make deals, I exist. But I haven't felt anything. Not really. Then, at that wedding, I overheard you talking to someone about your son before your cousin interrupted. The love in your voice, the fierce, unconditional pride, it was the first thing that broke through the numbness." He took a shaky breath. "When I heard what Amelia said, I saw a woman who would do anything for her child, fighting a world that was trying to crush her. And I wanted to help. Not out of pity, Clara, but because helping you and your Leo, it feels like I'm honoring my Leo. It's selfish, I know. It's the first thing that has made me feel like a person again." The truth of his confession settled over her, dismantling every wall of suspicion she had built. The grand gestures were not about power or control. They were the clumsy, desperate attempts of a grieving man to find a reason to live. Tears welled in her eyes, not for herself, but for him, for the unimaginable loss he had endured. "I'm so sorry, Julian," she whispered, using his first name without thinking. She took the job. Clara threw herself into the work, her dormant skills returning with surprising speed. The world of finance and analytics felt like coming home. She was sharp, intuitive, and Julian quickly came to rely on her insights. They developed a comfortable, professional rhythm, punctuated by moments of quiet friendship. He would ask about Leo, and his eyes would light up as she shared stories of her son's latest antics. She, in turn, learned about the man behind the legend, his quiet integrity, his sharp wit, his deep-seated loneliness. Their growing closeness did not go unnoticed. Marcus Vance, a senior board member with a reputation for ruthless ambition, watched them with a predatory gaze. Marcus had been Julian's rival for years, constantly trying to undermine him. What Clara didn't know was that Marcus was the executive who had signed off on the subpar brake components that had cost Julian his family, burying the safety reports to cut costs. Julian had suspected him for years, but had never found concrete proof. Marcus saw Clara as Julian's weakness, a vulnerability to be exploited. He saw an opportunity to remove Julian from power once and for all. One rainy Tuesday, Clara was called into a meeting with human resources and the head of security. Julian was there, his face a grim, unreadable mask. On the table between them was a file. "Miss Evans," the security chief said, his tone cold. "We have traced a significant data breach to your workstation. Confidential acquisition plans were leaked to our primary competitor last night." Clara's blood turned to ice. "What? That's impossible. I would never." "The digital trail is conclusive," he continued, sliding a printout across the table. It showed logs of her computer accessing and transmitting the sensitive files. It was undeniable, yet completely false. She had been framed. Her eyes shot to Julian, pleading. He looked at her, his expression a mixture of conflict and something she couldn't decipher. For a terrifying moment, she thought he doubted her. "I believe you," he said, his voice low but firm, cutting through the sterile accusations of the security chief. "Clara did not do this. Leave us." The other men, surprised by his authoritative tone, gathered their files and exited the room. Alone with Julian, Clara felt her composure crack. "Someone did this to me," she said, her voice shaking. "Why would anyone?" "It wasn't about you," Julian said, his eyes darkening with a cold fury. "It was about me, and I know who did it. Marcus Vance." He explained his history with Marcus, the accident, his long-held suspicions. "He sees you as a way to destroy me. He frames you. I defend you. The board sees it as a lapse in judgment, and they vote me out. He gets everything he wants. So what do we do?" Clara asked, the gravity of the situation sinking in. This wasn't just about her job. It was about corporate espionage, and she was the pawn. "We fight back," Julian said, a determined glint in his eye. He thinks you're a weakness. We're going to prove you're my greatest strength. He made one mistake. He underestimated you. For the next 48 hours, they worked relentlessly from the secure sanctuary of Julian's penthouse. He brought in a trusted team of cybersecurity experts while Clara, armed with her knowledge of the company's finances, began digging. She refused to be a victim. If Marcus had framed her, he had to have left a trace, a digital footprint. As she sifted through endless lines of code and financial reports, she noticed something, a tiny, almost imperceptible anomaly. A pattern of microtransactions, siphoning fractions of a cent from thousands of international accounts into a single offshore entity. It was a classic embezzlement scheme, brilliant in its subtlety, and the routing codes matched the same servers used in the data leak. He wasn't just leaking data to frame me, she said, her voice electric with discovery. The leak was a distraction, a smokescreen to hide this. He's been stealing from the company for years. Julian looked at her with pure admiration. You found it. You found the proof I've been looking for. The emergency board meeting was a lion's den. Marcus Vance, smelling blood in the water, presented his case against Clara with smug confidence, painting her as a corporate spy and Julian as the compromised CEO who had let her in. His personal feelings for this woman have clouded his judgment and put this entire company at risk, Marcus declared, gesturing toward Clara. When he was finished, Julian simply nodded to Clara. With quiet, unshakable confidence, she stood and walked the board through her findings. She didn't just present the data. She told the story it revealed, laying out Marcus's years of theft and deception with irrefutable clarity. The color drained from Marcus's face. He lunged to his feet, his composure shattering. She's lying. This is a fabrication to save herself. He turned his venomous glare on Clara. You think you're so clever, but you're nothing. I'll ruin you. You and that little boy of yours. Before he could finish the threat, Julian moved. He was in front of Clara in an instant, a protective shield between her and Marcus's rage. His voice was dangerously calm. Security has already been dispatched to your office, Marcus, Julian said, his eyes like chips of ice. We have everything. It's over. Defeated, Marcus sagged, and security guards entered the room to escort him away. The room was silent, the board members staring in stunned disbelief. Later that evening, standing on the balcony of Julian's penthouse, the city lights glittering below, the adrenaline finally faded, leaving them in a space of raw emotion. The shared danger, the fight for their futures, had forged a bond between them that was deeper than friendship. Thank you, Clara, Julian said softly, turning to face her. You did more than save my company today. You gave me back my purpose. We saved each other, she replied, her heart full. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. It started as a way to heal my past, he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. I thought helping you was about honoring my Leo, but I was wrong. It was always about you. You and your Leo, you are my future. He leaned in and kissed her, a kiss filled with relief, gratitude, and the promise of a new beginning. In that moment, all the pain and struggle of her past melted away, replaced by a profound sense of hope. A year later, the scent of pine and cinnamon filled their home. A magnificent Christmas tree stood in the corner of the living room, its lights twinkling. Julian was on the floor, laughing as a 3-year-old Leo crashed a toy truck into a tower of blocks he had just built. The sound of their shared joy was the only music Clara needed. She watched them from the doorway, a mug of hot chocolate warming her hands. A simple, elegant diamond ring glittered on her left hand. She was no longer just an analyst. Julian had recognized her talent and drive, and she was now the chief financial officer of Thorn Industries. She was his partner in every sense of the word. She thought back to that miserable wedding, to the shame of her thrift store dress and the cruelty of her cousin's words. She remembered the desperation that had nearly consumed her. It felt like a lifetime ago. A single, whispered offer from a stranger on a balcony had changed everything. It had been an act of kindness born from his tragedy, but it had blossomed into a love that had healed them both, building a new family from the ashes of their broken pasts. That whisper had become the foundation of her entire world.